Halloween Kills was released earlier this month, and this week saw the release of the official novelization, which I highly recommend to fans of the movie and fans of the Halloween series in general. And I'm very excited to welcome on the author of the book, Tim Waggoner. And by way of introduction, Tim is an extremely prolific author. He's written over 50 novels and 7 short story collections, mostly in the fantasy and horror genres. He does both original works and media tie-ins for franchises like Alien, Nightmare on Elm Street, Supernatural, and now, of course, Halloween. So, Tim, thank you again for taking a quick break from all of that writing to speak with me today.
Well, thanks for having me.
So, first, I just wanted to say congratulations on the novel. I loved reading it after seeing the movie, especially because with the book, I think you have a little bit more room to breathe in terms of fleshing out the characters. And at least for me personally, that helped me connect with them more and really feel the tragedy and suspense when we face off against Michael. And what I found really interesting about the book especially is that not only do you flesh out his victims, but we also get a little bit into Michael Myers' head. And for me, those were some of my favorite sections, the way that you were able to still maintain the enigma while at the same time dipping a little bit into the way he views the world. And I would love for you to start out by just talking a little bit about how you approach writing the character of Michael Myers.
Yeah, it was the most exciting thing I got to do. That and write Laurie. I was like, this is going to be great. And I love the fact that Michael's an enigma, that he dwells in this space between being, a physical flesh and blood person and then being something else, and with nothing to ever tell us what he is. Depending on the movie and the franchise.
Right.
But in general, is the archetype. I think that's where he's strongest. And that's what I wanted to preserve, too. So one of the things I did was I, of course, read John Passarella's novel, the novelization of the Halloween 2018. I wanted to see how he wrote Michael so I could try to keep that going so it would feel like my book was almost like they were written kind of by the same person, like they were a continuation. There were some things in his book that the script for the new movie didn't have, contradicted, so I couldn't keep it. But so I saw that. Then I went and read the Dennis Etchison's novelization of Halloween 2. And he wrote it under the name Jack Martin, but Dennis Etchison's wonderful literary horror writer. I just love his stuff. And I had to probably illegally buy a PDF off eBay to get it because you can't find it any other way. I turned my eyes away from it and said, maybe it's legal. But then I read his scenes to see how he did it. And so I tried to use some of the same vocabulary, like that both of them called Michael the Shape. And, I saw the movie when it first came out. And when they would refer to Michael as the Shape, like in articles, I'd be like, that's terrible. I hate that name. He's just Michael. Everybody calls him Michael. But, it works. It can work really well. That actually is one of the things that helped me. I decided to use the Shape because, John and Dennis both did. But also in a way, it kind of tells you that Michael is this. There's a distance when you say the Shape instead of his name. And so writing it almost as if in some ways he thought of himself like that, maybe not that exact word, but in that way, that really helped a lot. Trying to think, I thought of him almost in terms as I would like write a shark. Because a shark is, they're not sentient in the way we are, as far as we know. But they're kind of it's all with them. It's stimulus and response. It's just act and react. They are what they do, and they're really single-minded. In terms of what they do, and they're the best in what they do. Have been for millions of years, and so that helped a lot too. And then sometimes, I was just in my mind walking around in a Michael Myers mask, just trying to imagine what I might think or feel and seeing how far the filmmakers had let me get away with, would they make me pull stuff out? And they never did. So
I noticed that when you use the Shape to describe Michael, I believe it's only in the sections when you're writing from his perspective.
Right.
And I think that helped me sort of see what you're saying now, where Michael doesn't necessarily think of himself as a human. He almost thinks of himself as that predator. And I was actually curious. So you mentioned how he is this sort of enigma. And, like you said, depending on which continuity you're looking at, but at least in the current one, they never outright say he's supernatural, but there are sort of hints at it. He kind of straddles that line. I'm curious, why do you think that's so effective? Why is it so much more unsettling that we don't really know his true nature versus if you were to say, well, he's, half ghost or he's some kind of a monster? I feel like that would make it almost less disturbing.
Yeah, I think that's because horror is best when it's about the unknown. One of the things I accepted as a kid when I would watch horror movies, but one of the things I dislike as an adult is when they figure out what the rules are. It grounds the thing in reality, whatever it is. It makes it smaller. You're not afraid of it as much because you know a way to deal with it, and it doesn't connect to anything bigger. Because I think that anything that is unknown, there's like this big, who the hell knows what behind it that could be. It's just so threatening. And I think that a lot of horror makes the mistake of trying to over-explain. There's no damn way to explain Jason because none of the stuff makes sense. From the first movie to the what, it doesn't matter.
Well, he got electrocuted, and that turned him into a zombie, right?
Right, that part works. But I remember reading the novelizations of the first 6, and the writer Simon Hawke, he said that he gave like Jason Wolverine's mutant healing ability. That's why he didn't die like in the second movie or whatever. So that's kind of cool, but in a way it takes away the mystique. So I think that it is important to straddle that line, and that was one thing that the people of Blumhouse had me pull back on just a bit, because they had the big speech at the end of the movie about Michael transcending. Once I hit that, I'm like, oh, I'm going to try to set that up a little bit. And they were like, no, pull out. We don't want any more of that kind of note being hit in the script. And there was a little more in the script that made it clear how injured Michael was at the end, which you don't see in the movie. He's injured, but he's still walking around just fine. So it was even more of, what is he in the script originally.
I was actually curious to ask you about that point you just brought up, because I saw your interview with Bloody Disgusting where you mentioned how you did have to pull back in a couple of places. Would you mind sharing some of the details of what you were originally thinking that you sort of took out?
If I could remember them, I would. I wrote this thing a year and a half ago, so I'd need to go back because the movie got put back by a year.
That's right, yeah.
And so they were small things. Whenever I write a tie-in and it's with an established, it's not like set in a general like game world and I can make up my own characters like a D&D world and I can make up the adventures. If I'm dealing with a xenomorph or I'm dealing with Michael, I'm trying to not push it too far. But there were just a couple hints, maybe like the way he would respond to being injured, perhaps, maybe in the way that he would seem to appear or disappear. And sometimes I would do that, try to make it more like a metaphor or like the perception of a character. Gotcha. Like it would seem to a character that Michael just kind of like merged with the shadows, but he didn't. So I think it was more like a language like that because it wasn't anything big. I didn't do anything huge.
Gotcha. And I'm curious, when you're talking about not showing the rules too much and that sort of taking away from the mystique, how important do you think it is, if at all, for the writer to have those rules in mind, even if they're not all presented to the reader or the viewer? I was doing a deep dive into The Shining recently, and I know Stanley Kubrick, I guess, is no surprise. He was very, very fixated on that. He felt like there had to be rules, even if they weren't presented to the audience. Do you think that's an important part, or do you think it's okay even for the writer to just have some ambiguity even in their own mind?
I think maybe like you kind of split the difference. Like, in general, maybe that just a couple things about a werewolf, but you don't know everything about your particular werewolf in a story. So there's some kind of unknown even for you. With Michael in general, the rules are pretty much set up from the first movie. We just don't understand where they come from. We know he doesn't stay down. We know he's going to get back up. We know that somehow he doesn't bleed to death.
Right.
It's one thing to ignore pain, or his muscles keep working. If you get shot like in the arm, your arm should stop working, but it doesn't. So we don't know why, but we know that's a rule. With him, that's what he does. He doesn't talk for whatever reasons, just never does. And so, yeah, there are basic rules, but there isn't like a scientific treatise on exactly, how Michael can withstand these injuries. Something like where he's doing like special meditation techniques from like the yogis and the mountains of the east. Who knows what the hell he's done or what he's tapped into. And I think that the beginning of the first movie does so well with that, with Loomis, given all his weird speeches that are so awesome about trying to convince people that Michael's not human. And he sounds like a lunatic until at the very, as the movie goes on, you're like, wait a minute. And so in that ending, almost In the first movie, it's like you just hear his breathing as we see all these empty rooms and places. It is almost like it's like Obi-Wan in Star Wars. He's like transcended to be part of the dark force, I guess, the Halloween force. So, I mean, some basic things about him, stuff that he wouldn't do, like he's not going to run. He's never going to run for whatever reason. Fast, but he's not going to run. And that's enough to, I think, create the feeling that this is a real character without spoiling the ambiguity and the power of the unknown that's behind it.
And I think you may have just dropped a minor spoiler for Halloween Ends, that we'll see Michael Myers' Force Ghost speaking to Laurie or...
Yeah, Rob Zombie did that kind of in
that's right.
Halloween 2. Yeah, he sort of had I guess it was probably the spirit, since Laurie saw him, the spirit of little Michael talking.
That's
right.
I
thought was kind of a clever way of getting Michael's voice in there, sort of. But yeah, who knows? Maybe we'll get that. We kind of did they did, have that image of little Michael in the window. So, which I don't think was in the script. I don't remember if that was there. I think I would have remembered that.
Yeah, and I don't think it was in the novel. So I'm sure that it would have been. Probably
if it wasn't in the novel, it's not in the script. Yeah. Because I didn't take away anything from the. Didn't delete anything from the script. Right.
And that was actually what I wanted to ask you about next. I'm just really curious what your process is in adapting the screenplay. Like when you're actually put pen to paper and you start writing, do you have a copy of the script next to you and you're kind of looking back at it as sort of, here are the points I need to hit, and let me, as I'm going along, make sure I'm hitting them? Or is it you read it, you start writing, and you kind of go back and forth?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good question. I've done 4 novelizations, and the way that I've had access to the script was different in each one. I had a printout that was sent to me by an editor at Titan Books. They send me the script, and I can print it out here at home. I've had access to the studio's intranet, and I can look at it anytime. And then I've had access for 3 days at a time, which they didn't tell me. And when my access stopped, I panicked because I'm like, this is it. So normally what I do is I read the script first just for the story. And once I've done that, I may make a couple notes about like stuff I might be able to expand on or add. But usually I go back to the script and do that. I'm like, I could add this cool thing to this scene. I could draw this out, or this scene would be cool from so-and-so's point of view, because, scenes in movies aren't from anybody's point of view. They're from the audience's point of view. So they just show us people doing stuff. And so I sometimes have to think, do I do Laurie's point of view here? Or do I do Sheriff Brackett's point of view here, or whatever? So I do that. And then I think about cool stuff I could add. Like, are there things that I could just like create myself that would fill in something here or there? And then what I do is I sit down and I type up all the dialogue, because I have to keep all that. Matter of fact, this is the only time for Halloween Kills they made me keep all the dialogue exactly as it was in the script. I wasn't even allowed to streamline it. Because sometimes, like, if you read a script, there's like the word no 3 times in the same line of dialogue, and an actor can do a lot with that, but you can't do anything with that on the page. Right. So I would just make it 1 no, and they were like, no, it has to be exactly word for word. I'm like, okay. But I type all that up, and so then I just have a bunch of dialogue, with quotation marks around it. And then what I do is, with the script next to me, is I start writing and filling things in around it. Sometimes the scripts usually, to greater or lesser degree, but they're usually pretty descriptive about the setting, what's happening, what's around. The Halloween Kills so I had plenty to work with. Sometimes I'll even pull like particular little descriptions out because I want the scriptwriter's voice to come out. So just even like a few little bits here and there would be like, verbatim from the script, the way they described it. Because I think of like novelizations as like doing a collaboration with people I'll never see. So I want to make sure that they're in there too. And then I add stuff as I go. And usually by the time I get to the end, it's a good draft. Then it goes to the editor. The editor may have me make a few changes. Then it goes to the studio. And I never know, most of the time, I don't know who at the studio is actually reading it. I know Ryan Turek read it because he mentioned it in an article. And a couple other people, because he just said a couple other people did. But then I get the notes. The notes go to the editor from them, comes back to me. Then the whole process goes through one more time. And usually that's enough. They're usually happy by that point, and they sign off. And so that's, pretty much the process. Oh, and I also, all the novelizations I've done are sequels. So I watched the original movie because I want to get a feel for, even though you know, all of them, I'd already seen the movies and owned them, and I've seen every Halloween movie. But I went ahead and like watched the first one again too, since it was, 2018 just came from that one. So I ignored all the others. And just to get a feel for how people moved and talked and what some of the things looked like, since a lot of the way people are dressed, it's all the same night. So that helps. I can know what people dress. I'll look for production photos, anything that was released online, because you don't get anything but a script. They don't give you anything. You don't get to see the movie ahead of time. You don't get to see any footage. They don't send you, most of the time, they don't send you reference photos. And I also look for interviews with the director and the screenwriters who just might give a little bit, at least to like their philosophy or their themes or the way they kind of approach the story. So I do that early on too. So I build all of that into sounds like a lot of work.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work and like books or scripts where there's a lot of like machines that they don't explain. Like, somebody's on a jet ski and I'm like, the hell? Okay, I got to go find a jet ski. And in this movie, for the script, they didn't specify what vehicles the characters were driving. So I just had to pick vehicles, which I knew would not be in the movie, but that's just the way it goes.
Right. It's funny because I was thinking about the scene where Lonnie is killed and they find his body kind of stuffed into that door into the attic. And when I was writing about the movie for my channel, I was like, what is that thing called? So I was curious to see what you called it in the book. And I think I used the word scuttle attic, and you had said, basically an entryway into the attic. But yeah, it's along the same lines of, they can just, something could be really vague in the script and you just put it on screen, but you have to figure out how to actually translate that to words.
Right. Yeah. And if they don't do that in the script, then I do spend a lot of time trying to figure that stuff out, because it's one of the great strengths of movies. Like you said, they just show us stuff and we accept it. But otherwise, like when I think it's Brackett who's like bleeding out, and the one boy, is it Cameron? I can't remember his name. Might have been Cameron. He sees him and stops his bleeding. And in the script, he tied a tourniquet around his neck. And my wife was a former ENT, so I went to her and I said, if somebody's bleeding out from the neck and you tied a tourniquet, she goes, he would die. You're cutting off the blood flow to the neck. And so, she told me how you would do it. That probably still wouldn't survive, but here's how you could probably do it. And then it ended up, that's kind of what they did in the movie. So I was glad they probably consulted somebody. But go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, I think I remember the line in the book where it said, where the character considered a tourniquet. And I was like, well, I can't do that because...
Yeah, and I did that because of the script and hoping they wouldn't, get after me for it. And most of the time with stuff like that, they don't. They just, they figure you fixed it or whatever. And yeah, so for my wife, she didn't read the script and didn't see the movie until it came out. But she knew about a bunch of the injuries, because I would go to her and say, now what would really happen here if this happened to somebody? So I could either describe it well or find a way to try to make it seem, believable. Like trying to find a way to make it seem believable that Michael could survive that fire. I spent a lot of time researching house fires, and, like in modern houses, because of the synthetic stuff they're made out of, they release a toxic gas that will kill you almost immediately. So there's no way. So Michael could. So I had to make sure Laurie's house was old, and I did a bunch of other stuff to make it at least seem possible that if Michael was a flesh and blood dude, he would have gotten out of there alive. So that took a lot of work. In the movie, you just show him. He just walks out.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I mean, it sounds like a complicated but a fun process, almost like you're trying to fit all these different pieces together. You're trying to make sure all these different voices are heard. Like you said, you're taking you're taking all of the dialogue word for word plus some of the description. Is it, I imagine, how similar is it to the process of writing original work? Are they pretty different and you just enjoy both different processes for different reasons?
Yeah, it really is different because you've already got, an outline to go from. So writing them goes a lot faster than writing my own stuff because a lot of it's all done. And it's almost like, in a way, it's like if I was either like an actor or director in a theater for a play. You've got a play script, but then you have to figure out how to do all these things to bring it to life. So it's a little like that. it just stretches a lot of different creative muscles.
Right.
It is a lot of fun, and there's all kinds of stuff you end up doing you never expected. Like I know lots about house fires now, which I didn't before, and it's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm. I went online before the interview and just kind of mentioned to some people I was going to be speaking with you
Mm-hmm.
to see if they had any questions they wanted me to pass along. So wanted to ask you a couple of them. So first, you mentioned you've seen all the Halloween movies, but I'm curious, what's been your relationship with the franchise since it started in 1978? You know, I know you mentioned you were in theaters for the first one. Yep. Since then, were you back in theaters every time a new one came out? And do you have a favorite other than the original?
I think I've seen all of them in the theater except maybe 6 and Resurrection. I think those are the Curse of Michael Myers. Um, those I probably just saw when they got released on video or whatever. Probably because of the reviews that I read. Or it just didn't work out. My oldest daughter's 26, but she probably was a baby during the time of one of those and just didn't get out to theaters very much. In general, I remember when the second one came out that, seeing it in the theaters, that it was different tonally. I mean, it wasn't so much of him moving in and out of shadows as he was just kind of a wrecking ball going through the hospital, which is interesting because he's kind of like that in, Halloween Kills and echoes that in a lot of ways. But enjoyed that one really well. Halloween 3 was just batshit crazy and it was great. Just loved it in the theaters. And then when 4 and 5 came out, seeing them in the theaters, for me, it was kind of like a distant echo, sort of Michael Myers, but not that far away. So it was okay. It was good to see him again. Mm-hmm. And so I liked both of those. I liked the fact that they were like a duology. I thought that was really cool. Mm-hmm. Halloween H2O came out, and it was great to see Jamie Lee Curtis, but it just felt kind of hollow to me for some reason. I don't know why. Maybe it was because of the setting. It's like the only one I think that really takes Michael out of a small town. Right. And I have a theory that the setting is just as important for monsters. Like, when Jason took Manhattan, he was just a small dude. He just did not look like an imposing presence. Not like he does when he's going around the woods. I think the woods is a big part of, what he is. And, but still liked it. And then of course they had oh no, Michael's not really dead. This is how Michael somehow managed to get out of it. And I'm like, what? That's like an old time serial from like the 1930s where you have the cheat ending to escape. And it was, I thought it was an interesting idea to do the cameras just because people were doing the reality show thing at the time. That was about it. It was an interesting concept, I guess, but still always happy to see, Michael walking around, whatever it is. I like the Rob Zombie movies. I wasn't happy that it was a little more concrete, and at least in the first one, there was no mystic stuff, but he made up for it with all kinds of weird mysticism in the second one. Mm-hmm. So, I enjoy them for what they are, different take. But no, I still love, like most people, love the first one the best. Mm-hmm. And I think that, 2018 was really good. And, I know the reviews for Halloween Kills have been pretty mixed, but for me, I've known this story for a year and a half. So none of it's new. I can't have a new reaction to any of it. Right. So when I watch the movie, it's weird because, you picture things differently than maybe they did. Mm-hmm. And while they didn't change a ton from the script, they left some stuff out, but they didn't alter anything in a big way at all. That there were no surprises for me. Right. And, so I've watched it twice now. Second time was better. It was more like a regular movie. Mm-hmm. But to me, it's just like inevitable. It's like the story it's like in concrete. So I don't even question whether they did this or that or whether it's good or not. It's like, this is just it's shape. Right.
The
movie.
Yeah, I think the movie it's tough because it has so many characters to balance. I think especially compared to previous Halloween movies where it's a really tight, Michael versus Laurie, maybe a couple of her friends, versus here you bring back Tommy, Lonnie, Lindsay, Marion, which is one of the reasons why I really enjoyed the book, like we were talking about earlier, just being able to flesh those characters out. It almost gave me Stephen King It vibes, the way we're dealing with these adults that originally faced this evil when they were children, and that really worked for me.
Yeah, and I think that's probably the big benefit I had going into watching the movie was I knew all this backstory stuff that is not in the movie, but it was in my head. So I can't really see it. Trying to imagine seeing the movie, I imagine most people would be like, There's no development of the survivors. There's no development of the other escaped patient, Mr. Tivoli, and for it not having much impact because of that. And just listening to the way you described it, it made me realize that because he had so many people to kill, there's nobody to stalk. Because Michael's a stalker. He's not like just walk up and kill you like Jason is. And he has so many people to mow down that he doesn't have any time to stalk. So, I can see why people felt like that part was kind of missing.
Yeah, but that makes sense. For you, it's almost an intellectual exercise of imagining how it would affect people. You can't forget what you know and watch it through that lens. Shifting gears a little bit to horror kind of in general, I was watching your most recent YouTube video where you talked about how horror doesn't necessarily have to be scary. And completely agree with that. I've kind of in my head always divided horror between legitimately disturbing and horrifying on one side, and then just sort of spooky on the other, where it's more playful. You have ghosts, goblins, and monsters, but it's fun. But I'm curious, especially for that first category that actually elicits fear and makes us feel things that in any other context we'd say are unpleasant. What do you think draws us to that? Why do we choose to seek that out? And for you personally, what's kind of kept you interested in horror all these years?
Well, for me personally, there's just something about horror that stimulates my imagination more than anything else. I mean, I love science fiction and fantasy. I love all kinds of imaginative stuff. But there's just something about the dark, what's in the dark that it just stirs my imagination, whether it's literal or symbolic. For people in general, I think there's a lot of things I think that we get to confront a lot in a very, very safe way, in a very controlled environment. For some people love roller coasters. I hate them. If I could drive the roller coaster, I'd be fine, but I just can't stand just sitting there. But some people just love them. They get that kind of, they sort of danger, a little bit more than a movie, but in general, probably relatively safe. In a movie though, you are safe, and you could get up and walk away anytime, or if you're at home, you can hit pause. Same with a book. You can put it down and come back. There's a lot about how to manage that kind of experience that you could not manage in real life. Like, if you were in a ship that was sinking, there's nothing to manage. You're trying to survive. But you could watch a movie about that or read a book about that and try to imagine what you would do in those circumstances. It gives you a chance to kind of test death a little bit, test danger, test injury, test all kinds of things that are, we're not going to experience all of them in our lives. It's not like on I remember a South Park episode where one episode Kenny died from everything hitting him, like, as a train here and a plane and whatever. That's not going to happen to us, but something is along the way. We know it. And it's as sentient beings, it's one of the things we really have to somehow come to terms with. Plus just, bad things happen. Why is there evil? Why are people cruel to each other? Is there more than, ghosts are positive in the sense that they show that there's life after death, even if they're malicious ghosts, because unless all the people turn malicious as soon as they die. It's like in The Corpse Bride when all the ghosts come up and people are afraid till one little kid says, "Grandpa," and everybody's like, "Oh, it's just our loved ones. They just look nasty." So I think all those things, and it gives you a chance too you can be the killer in your mind. You can feel what it might be like to stalk somebody and kind of feel that power and never, ever, ever go near to hurting anybody. And, you get a lot out. There's a lot of catharsis. My wife doesn't like horror at all. Not really. And when she first started going with me to horror conventions, she was like, "These are the nicest, sweetest people I've ever met." And I'm like, you just get a lot out. And so she loves going just for the people, but she doesn't want to watch, she has super vivid dreams. She'll have nightmares that go on forever at night about the stuff she sees, if it's too scary. I sleep like a baby. So,
right. Well, does anything in film or in books, does anything still scare you at this point?
Probably not. I mean, there are things that disturb me or things that, like anybody else, that if it's too close to something that's going on in my life right now, we just had to put down a couple of our dogs for different reasons in the space of 2 weeks. It was really rough. And then I was reading a Richard Lehman book called Cuts, and it's about a serial killer. And on his way out of town, he decides to kill a dog. And I'm like, not today. I'm gonna put this one away and come back to it a little bit later. So things like that sometimes happen. It can, with I get this sometimes more with like nonfiction. Like if you read something about aliens that come into your bedroom at night and I'm reading it in the dark in the bed at night, my imagination will start to go, no, don't do this. You're worried about this stuff as a kid. You're not a kid. So yeah, there's some things that still, happen that comes up. But yeah, I mean, it's like trying to recapture the experience of being a child. You really can't. And I don't think that unless you're just prone to being scared, and you'll always be scared no matter what, even if you know it's coming, you're always going to jump. And I'm not like that. I think that you're going to get a little bit, kind of a thick skin when it comes to it. And that's okay. Last time I remember being scared was watching the Babadook at home, and I was by myself. And the very first time the Babadook says its name, I'm like, pause. It was late at night and I was alone. I'm like, this is ridiculous. I know better.
Right.
I'm on the ground floor of an apartment, though. Neighbors are this far away. Maybe the Babadook's that far away.
Yeah.
So I put it away for a little bit.
Well, I also wanted to ask, we said at the beginning of this how prolific you've been writing. And I was wondering if you have any advice. Do you ever wake up and not feel motivated to write or not tackle the project that's currently on your plate? And what do you do at those times? How do you keep the energy up and how do you stay motivated?
Well, sometimes I give myself permission to take a break because I do seem to go in cycles where I'll naturally want to work a lot. And then sometimes where my brain just kind of goes into neutral and I just let it for a little while. But you can't always do that. Like you said, may have a deadline. And then I just treat it like it's a job. I get up and put myself at the computer in a way that will work. I teach college English. That's my day job. And so I know my schedule and I know when I have, time. So maybe I'll get up early in the morning, or maybe I'll write, after my last class because it's done in the afternoon or something. But I make sure I'm at the keyboard and I just start. Even if it feels awful and I think it's going to suck, it doesn't matter because I've known that in general, my experience writing something has nothing to do with the way it comes out. I can never forget my experience. I'll reread something and go, oh man, yeah, that was a pain in the ass to write. I hated it, but the words are okay. And you can always work with it later. You can always fix it later. So, I have a little Post-it note sitting here somewhere. Here it is. It says writing is a choice and writing is a commitment. I put that up there too, to remind myself. You can't always make that choice and you can't always make that commitment. You've got your health, you've got other things, responsibilities, but everything else being equal, I can choose to sit down to write. And if I've made a commitment, like not only to myself, but I've signed a contract that says this book is due in 3 months or whatever, then, I have to remind myself that I got to do it. And, and I've been doing it long enough, because I started writing seriously at 18 and I'm 57 now. So that helps a lot too. Even if I don't feel like doing it, I know I can because I've just done it so many times.
I think one thing you hit on that I totally agree with is when you said treating it like a job. It's interesting. I feel like a lot of us have absolutely no problem doing work when it's assigned to us, when we're doing our day job. And if you can get this creative outlet to sort of get slotted into that part of your brain, this is a job, I need to do this part of your brain, it suddenly becomes easier to do. And I think part of that is, like you said, you just sit down at the keyboard and you start even if it feels a little bit awkward.
Yeah, and you also just have to get used to the fact that, a lot of the negative talk you hear in your head, they're just lies. They're just normal insecurities and worries, messages you absorb from people around you who may not be so supportive, or stuff you hear online or whatever. There's just a lot of static in a person's brain. And, you have to learn either to focus past that or just not listen to it, especially when you're writing. It's not easy, but I think that's one of the things that can really help a lot too.
I just had a couple more questions from the online fans, and one of them is coming back to Halloween Kills. The ending of the movie, like we've mentioned a few times, has a lot of ambiguity around Michael. Is he supernatural? What is he looking at through his sister's window? And when I saw that, I was so curious how you were going to handle that in the book. And there was one moment I really wanted to quote. Sure. Where you say, the shape stands at his sister's window as he did so many years ago. Blood-splattered mask reflected in the glass before him. He does not see himself, though. He sees something else, something beyond, something greater. He sees a series of musical tones plays then, distracting him. I was on the edge of my seat. I was like, okay, here's the answer the movie didn't give us.
Yeah, I just made that up to see because I didn't know what the studio was going to do. So I decided to make that up because it still keeps the ambiguity. And I thought if they didn't like it, they'd just take it out. So yeah, I have no idea what he sees. He sees the stuff Loomis talks about, whatever's inside him. Right. And and they didn't, they didn't have the stuff about him seeing himself in there. They added the I think that's what he might have been looking at, or else I would have put that in there and then still maybe said he sees something beyond it.
Gotcha. You can't make up an answer for what he sees, just so I can get a one take exclusive. I have the answer.
He sees like a decades long future of the franchise. That's what he's seeing. He's looking forward. I saw an article that somebody wrote that said the next one should follow up on the Halloween 5 and do the story of the little girl where she's at.
Oh, that's right, Jamie Lloyd.
Yeah, so go from that one. And I'm like, that's what he's seeing now. He's seeing, okay, that's the next one.
All right, good answer. And then one more, and I think this is a testament to how much people have enjoyed the book, but they wanted me to ask you if you would consider adapting some of the other Halloween movies that don't currently have novelizations, like 5, 6, and H2O. And I'm assuming that's not up to you, but I am just curious. What's that?
It's not up to me.
But I am curious if you would be interested in coming back to write more Michael Myers, whether it's adaptations of movies or even something original in that world.
Sure, I'd love to. I know there was 3 YA novels with Michael in them, and I remember when they came out, I was really jealous. I'm like, this would be so much fun to get to write, something original. So yeah, I would love to.
Maybe you could do a crossover with Silver Shamrock.
Yeah, that would be great. We did, one of my editors was a big fan of Halloween, so that's why we seeded all kinds of like little things to the other movies. And so she had me describe him as robot-like a couple times just for that reason. She's like, "We'll see if anybody gets that." And I'm like, it's such a subtle thing. I don't think they'll get it. But yeah, we did things like that. Like I named the pizza delivery White Horse Pizza because of Rob Zombie's using White Horse in his second film. And so yeah, we did put in. I mean, they already had the masks, but we did put in a couple little things. But I think that would be great. It would be a lot of fun to use those crazy druid guys and their tech, their weird tech, magic tech. Yeah, so that'd be kind of cool to use.
Yeah, I was thinking it's time for the Michael Myers canon to sort of return the favor, because in Halloween 3, you see Halloween playing in the background on TV. So I think in Halloween Ends, they've got to have a Silver Shamrock commercial come on.
That would be awesome. Yeah, I mean, they Silver Shamrock's in this world, so they should.
Yeah. Okay, awesome. So if it's not in the next movie, hopefully it'll be in your Halloween Ends novelization. I'll cross my fingers.
Yeah, we'll see. I have no idea what Titan plans to do, but if they want me, I'd love to do it.
Awesome. Well, I think with that, we can sort of wrap up. And I know that you've got a couple of cool things coming up with Zombicide Invader coming up in February, I think, for some space zombie action. Then you've got We Will Rise in July, which I'm looking forward to because I've never seen an apocalypse involving ghosts. So I'm very curious what that's going to look like.
Yep, the whole world, all over the world, ghosts all suddenly start appearing and going after people.
Oh, that sounds awesome. And then you have the workbook companion, I believe, for your Writing in the Dark textbook coming up.
Not sure when it's going to come out, but sometime next year.
Okay, perfect. And if people want to follow you and sort of keep up to date on those releases and anything else you've got planned next, where should they go? Your website, Twitter? What's the best place?
Yeah, website's fine. It's just timweiner.com, and it has links to all my social media. You can sign up for my newsletter there. So it's just like the best place to go.
All right, perfect. Well, check out the link in the description, and that'll take you there. So thank you again. Thank you so much for joining us. This has been a lot of fun. Halloween's my favorite holiday, so getting to talk to you was a great way to get me in the spirit for this weekend.
Okay. Well, I had a great time. Thanks so much for asking me.
Yeah, for sure. And hopefully we can have you on again sometime.
Yeah, sounds great.
All right, awesome. Take care.
Yeah, you too.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye now.